Hello there. The book I am going to be talking to you about today, I ended up liking so much more than I thought I would. What I thought I was getting into with this book, I thought it was going to maybe have to do with some sort of like ancient sacred curse of some sort, which didn't really do too much for me. This book was recommended to me by a fellow booktuber, Steve, at Heroic Book Adventures. He said, hey, body horror, and I generally don't decline body horror, so I decided to try it, and I'm really glad I did. I was able to finish this one quite quickly, even though it is indeed a longer book. The book I am talking about is The Ruins by Scott Smith. Hello, my name is Leah. Welcome to my channel, Dirty Little Literate, where I like to talk about books that are disturbing, disgusting, etc., what have you, and body horror sure can count in that category. And so let's just jump into it. The main characters, we have Amy and her boyfriend Jeff, and Stacy and her boyfriend Eric. Now, these four youngins, I would say early 20s, they are on a 3-week-long trip to Mexico as a bit of a last hurrah before Amy and Jeff go away to medical school. Now, Amy and Stacy, the two gals, they're best friends. And their boyfriends, they're the boyfriends. They're friendly, but they're not like really homies per se. So while they're on this trip, they meet a lot of other people at the hotel that they're staying at, a few of whom are some Greek men who seem to have made up their names like Pablo and Don Quixote, and they seem to switch who is named what throughout the book, kind of to mess with everyone else. And they do not speak English, but they're still hanging out, having a good time. I guess, speaking the same language is not a prerequisite for them to have a nice little time together. And one night, Stacy, who let's not forget has a boyfriend, is on this trip with her boyfriend. She makes out with Don Quixote, or the man who at the time of the makeout is calling himself Don Quixote. Like in 5 minutes, someone else will be Don Quixote, and that will be the man that she did not make out with. But the vibe we're kind of supposed to have for Stacy is like, oh, she's not taking her relationship too serious, throwing caution to the wind, because she kisses this man in front of Amy and Jeff, who could easily say something to her boyfriend. And I mean, I don't think they want to. I don't think they're really trying to ruin vacation, but it's kind of putting them in an uncomfortable situation as well. We find out that Stacy has cheated multiple times, and he's actually been aware of this, and it's part of their relationship dynamic. She cheats on him. He's super wounded. She says she's never going to do it again, and she cries, and he takes her back, and that's the vibe that they have going on. Now, the other couple, Jeff and Amy. So Amy is just supposed to kind of be like a whiny baby. Her main personality trait that they try to highlight is that she's a complainer. She whines about everything. Even on vacation, we gotta whine about everything. And her boyfriend, Jeff, he's someone that's gonna go to medical school. He's very kind of analytical and button-up type of guy. He doesn't seem like super fun to me. So all four of these people, they've been hanging out with the Greeks at the hotel, and they have also been hanging out with a German man named Matthias. One day they're having a conversation with Matthias, and I may very well be saying his name wrong. So they're having a conversation with him, and they find out that this trip to Mexico that they're on, he actually came to Mexico with his brother. One day, him and his brother got in a fight, and his brother had apparently fallen in love with a woman that he'd known for like a day, who's an archaeologist, which, archaeology lady, that's kind of hot. And so I guess he ditched his brother to go to this archaeological dig site with this hottie. And it's been a while since Matthias has heard from him after he left, and he's kind of concerned, so he's planning on going to the archaeological dig site, because I guess there was a map of this location that his brother was going to be going to. He just thought he would be back by now. So he's telling them, yeah, I'm gonna go to these ancient ruins. I guess that's where the dig site is. And he's telling them about it. And in this conversation, Jeff is kind of like, ooh, that's a little intriguing. I would love to explore some ruins. And so he's like, hey, I'll go with you. We'll help. And by we, I mean, it doesn't have to be we. Honestly, he's fully prepared, I think, to ditch his girlfriend Amy to like go check out the ruins. But Amy is very aware that she's like the resident complainer and she doesn't want to be the one to be like, I don't want to go, but hey, she don't want to go. Because Jeff and Amy are going, Stacy and her boyfriend Eric are also gonna go. And one of the dudes, Pablo, not the one that Stacy made out with, one of these Greek men, he is also gonna go on this trip. And so the morning that they're gonna go, Eric, Stacy's boyfriend, is super, super hungover. He's like hardly even aware what's happening. The description of like the setting, it's super fucking disgustingly hot. And then just picturing that like with a really bad hangover, it just seems like most of them aren't actually excited they're about to be doing this, but kind of everyone wants to, you know, be a good sport. And so they're going on this trip. So before they go on this bus to take them closer to these ruins, Stacy is actually harassed by some preteen boys who just randomly grab her boobs while she's walking down the street so they can distract her and she will be all flustered, and they take her hat and her sunglasses. So like she is kind of having a sad, rough day now, and like nobody even cares. She, like nobody saw it, and she tries to tell them like they stole my hat, they stole my glasses, and everyone's just like, oh, okay, whatever. Like I don't know why they don't seem to care. Well, she doesn't tell them that they did a whole titty grab theft situation. But anyway, so she's not really having a good time. Amy is trying so hard not to complain, but you know, she wants to. Eric's just hungover. Jeff is looking forward to it, and Matthias is looking forward to finding his brother. And Pablo, the Greek man, is just happy and smiley even though he can't talk to you, and he's just pulling out little bottles of liquor to drink at any given time. And so this is kind of where everyone's at when they're on the bus over. To get to the ruins, they're not going to be able to go by bus. They are going to need to have someone take them out there in their vehicle, and they find a cab driver and they have this map and they're showing him where the ruins are, and this man like doesn't want to take them there, but they're insistent, and he's like, okay, whatever, I guess I'll take you. And some of them have to fit in like the back of his truck with a super violent dog that's chained up, and the dog's trying to bite them. Amy's in the front seat, and as they're getting closer to their destination, the taxi driver, you know, there is some language barrier, but he keeps trying to say like, this place you're going to is bad, don't go there, it's bad, it's bad. Like that's just what he keeps saying over and over. And like, you know, I think he's preaching to the choir because she doesn't want to go. She tries to tell everyone else that that's what he's saying, but you know, they've already come so far. And I believe that the car ride, I think I want to say it's supposed to be like 8 miles or 13 miles. Am I just picking arbitrary numbers? I remember it either being 8 or 13 was supposed to be how many miles this drive was, but all of them are noting that the drive felt much, much longer than they were anticipating. It's a super bumpy road. There's no one out here. This is like a super remote location that they're going to. You know, tourists aren't going to like the archaeological dig site. Like you have to really be aware of this specific spot. You'd never stumble upon this. You'd have to be very intentional about going. Eventually, the driver lets them out, and they're basically in the middle of the jungle, and they're getting eaten alive by bugs. It's hot and gross. Based on the map, they know that there's a certain point that they're supposed to go to, and if they get to another point, they're gonna know they've gone too far. And the point at which they'll know that they've gone too far is if they reach this Mayan village. And so this Mayan village, the people living there, you know, they're not integrated into modern society. They don't have like electricity or things like that. Like they have a well. The language barrier, there's no way they can communicate with them, but you also get the sense that these Mayan people are not just like wanting random ass tourists to get all up in their space, because who the fuck are you? Because they realize they've gone too far, they turn back. They're trying to find this certain spot, and they do eventually find this trail after being lost for a while, but it looks like it's been intentionally blocked off. Like people tried to obscure the path, and it's like you have to kind of dig around in order to find it, almost like they didn't want people going there. They're kind of thinking like, oh, well, I guess that's kind of weird. I wonder why people wouldn't want us to go there. But they're trying to find Matthias's brother. They're just gonna do it anyway. And the whole time they're doing this, there is actually a couple little boys from the Mayan village who have been following them. They're like a ways back, and they all know that they're being followed, but I mean, the boys don't seem like they're trying to like do anything. It doesn't seem like they mean them any harm or anything like that. So they're just kind of like, okay. So they start going on this path, and once they do, the boys actually turn back. Like they don't want to follow them almost. Eventually they find the ruins. So they're thinking, okay, great, we are at the spot. And once they're at the spot, the boys come back with a bunch of men from the Mayan village. And these men are trying to communicate with them. There's one dude in particular that seems to be kind of, like the daddy of the group, like you're gonna listen to him. And he is like yelling, but they don't know what he's saying, and he's making all these gestures with his hands, and he seems really freaked out and upset, and they don't know if maybe it's a violation for them to be at these ruins. Like, are they sacred? They don't know. These men seem like they're trying to get them to not go into the ruins. They have not actually like stepped foot onto the ruins yet, but okay. Amy, our little whiny baby, she decides, I guess she's like into photography. She's like, now is the time to take some pictures. So she starts snapping photos of this man who is yelling at them. And that's not something you want to do with someone who is very clearly upset with you. Amy goes to take her picture, and as she does, she's needing to step back a little bit to get everything in the frame. And she kind of stumbles and realizes that her ankle's gotten entwined in some vines. And when this happens, the Mayans start freaking out, and they actually have guns and arrows. And at this point, they start raising their guns, raising their arrows at the group. And if the group tries to approach them and get closer, they're making like shooting motions, like letting them know, like, hey, this is what's up. And it seems like this really happened the moment that Amy stepped in the vines into the ruins. Now the group is super freaked out because they can't go back the way they came. Obviously, none of their cell phones work in the middle of the jungle. They're thinking, we just need to move forward, and hopefully at the dig site, we find Matthias's brother, whose name is Henrique, and we can maybe get a ride back with somebody or use somebody's cell phone, and they'll know what's going on and how we need to get out of this situation. Once they are at the top of the ruins, they see a couple tents. They look in these tents, and it is apparent that whoever was staying in these tents has not been there in quite some time. There's like dust on this shit. Like it's been unattended to for a while. So nobody's in the tents, and they're calling out, and it really does not seem like they're going to find anyone out there. So Jeff sees something tangled up in some of the vines at the top of the ruins, and he goes and gets closer, and he sees that it's a man's shoe attached to a man's foot, attached to a man's shin. It's a body. And as soon as he sees this, he kind of has this singing feeling in his gut, like he knows who this is. And Matthias comes and looks, and he confirms that it is his brother Henrique. Henrique is dead, so this is really not boding well for them. So Henrique is dead, and there is an arrow sticking out of his chest. And so clearly he was killed by the Mayans, and the assumption being that he was probably trying to go back, get past them, and he was killed. Matthias is super grief-stricken, heartbroken, so he's having a very emotional reaction. And this is very terrifying to the group, because this was how they were relying on getting out of this sketchy situation with the Mayans, and knowing that they really do mean business and they will kill them. And they're not sure what to do, but then they suddenly hear a cell phone ringing. And so they're like, okay, we just need to find wherever this ringing is coming from. This is gonna be our saving grace. They end up realizing that the ringing is coming from this hole in the ground. And the term that is being used is windlass. I don't know what this is, but it's basically, I guess, a hole in the ground. There is a rope that you can use at the side of the hole that you can use to lower yourself down in there. They're like, okay, if we can just get the cell phone, we're gonna be saved. And how lucky is it that the cell phone is still working after all this time? And so as a group, they decide that Pablo is going to be the one who gets sent down in the hole. They start sending him down, and it seems like it is a very deep hole. And then at one point they notice that there are some vines that are growing on the rope. It seems like there's something that comes from the vines that will like burn you if you touch it. It's like painful, and the vines are around this rope, and they realize that the vines, like, it's like burning through the rope, it's eating away at the rope. And so when Pablo is super low down, they realize this and realize that the rope is gonna break, so they try to start bringing him back up, and it's too late, and they hear this crazy crashing sound, and Pablo is screaming and in severe pain. So they know they need to send someone to go and get him. They are able to rip up the tent into like shreds of fabric and make a long rope of fabric that is not covered in vines so that they can send someone down. And they decide that they are going to send Amy because Jeff and Eric are stronger, so they're going to be the ones pulling the rope, and also she's lighter, so it's kind of easier to lower her down in there. She's going to go get Pablo, see how he's doing, get the cell phone, and go from there. So once she is at the bottom of the hole, she sees how horrible Pablo looks. His body looks contorted in all these crazy angles. It looks like his like legs are broken, and his back, it seems like his back is broken. And as she's, trying to tend to him, it seems like he's not able to move his lower half, and she is starting to realize that it seems like he might be paralyzed. They had actually built something to lower down into the hole, kind of like a board that they could strap him onto so that they could lift him back up. When Amy sees how bad his condition is, it's clear that like he's not going to be able to just easily come back up with her. They're going to need help. So they decide to send Eric down as well. They actually made something that is like a board that they could put Pablo on, kind of like a makeshift stretcher. And so they lower the board. So now Eric, Amy, Pablo, and the board are all in the hole. And once they're down there, they cannot figure out where the ringing is coming from. They cannot find the cell phone. So it's super dark and gross, and yeah, they can't find it. And so their priority right now is helping Pablo, and they realize that once they've lowered the board with these ropes, it's just a little bit too short to be able to fully lower the board. So it's not like they can just easily transfer him on over. Like they need to like pick him up and put him on there. But it's really not a good idea to move someone who has such serious injuries like this. And so Amy and Eric decide like they're just gonna have to lift him. And as they do, like they're not doing a good job of holding him in a way that isn't like breaking his body more and more. And he's like screaming, and it's this whole excruciating scene. They lift Pablo up. He's not in good condition. He's like soiled himself, and they don't have anywhere to like shower him or anything. Pablo's unconscious for a while, kind of passed out from all the pain. They find another body wrapped up in some of the vines. Jeff like, okay, well, we should probably start conserving our urine so we could dilute it and drink it. We are already in a severe enough situation to consider piss drinking. Now, there is like one like interesting instance, like everything is really horrible, and like Matthias's brother is dead, Pablo's whole body is broken, and sometimes he'll be awake and screaming, and sometimes he's unconscious, and They all feel disgusting, like they're sunburned, eaten alive by bugs. Everything is not going well. When Eric had gone down into the hole, he had accidentally fallen on something and like cut his leg open, so it's a pretty gnarly wound. And at one point, I guess, Stacy jerks off her boyfriend Eric just to like feel some sense of normalcy. I guess that gave them a little bit more peace of mind. But then in the morning, she sees that Eric is like covered in these vines. They've wrapped around him and they seem to be attracted to his semen, and the vines are wrapped around his penis and his testicles. And she's like trying to rip them off and they're not coming easily. And okay, so then she also realizes that the vine had started growing into his open wound on his leg. So he has it like growing inside of him and they're trying to yank it out, and Eric is freaking the fuck out, like, it's inside me, oh my god. And then meanwhile, they start hearing Pablo screaming bloody murder, like far more severe than what they've heard thus far. And so they go to look. They had covered Pablo up with a sleeping bag and they pull it back, and Pablo's lower half is bare. You know, they took off his clothes that he had soiled, and apparently vines are completely covering his entire lower half. Like they cannot see even an inch of skin. And so he's freaking out. They try to start pulling the vines off of him, and then they see his bones. These vines had eaten through all of his flesh. So top half is like a human body, lower half is a skeleton. Pablo's seeing this. How fucking horrifying would that be? And then the other thing is he doesn't speak English, so he cannot talk to anyone despite being in this absolutely terrifying situation. I just feel so bad for him. So things are really getting quite a lot worse. So Jeff starts going into his little practical mode, and he's like, oh my gosh, if Pablo's legs are like infected and then that like spreads, like he could get sepsis and die. And you know, he's trying to go to medical school, so he has a little idea of like, hey, should we cut Pablo's legs off? And I'll tell you, he's the only one who just thinks that that's a super like go-to idea. He's like, okay, you guys, at this point, because we don't have help, no matter what, he is going to die. So we could at least buy him a little time, and then if we get help, then maybe they could save him as long as his legs are cut off, so that we like prevented the infection, which is crazy. And they do like a group vote, and you know, there's no way that everyone's going to be on the same page, but it is ruled that they are going to cut off Pablo's legs. They have a knife, but it is like not a very impressive knife. And so like they also have to break his bones in order to do this. And Jeff is assuring everyone like, oh, he won't be able to feel anything because he's paralyzed. And it does not seem that that is true. He tries to play this off to everyone like, no, it's just because he saw what was happening and that's so terrifying. But no, his screams made it seem like, no, he can feel you cutting his fucking legs off. And he had this like giant stone that he just kept slamming into his legs to break his bones. I think if it's me, I'm gonna pass on having my legs cut off. Just let me die. I think Pablo gets everything the worst in this story. So they cut off Pablo's legs, and then they also need to like cauterize him. So I don't know if they have a pan or something, and he like gets it all hot and then like sizzles the little stumps, and oh my god. You may be wondering like, okay, so are we just sitting here with our dicks in our hands? Like, why would anyone think to come and save them? Like, how would anyone even know? Because it's not like they told anyone else they were going to these ruins, except for Pablo. The other two Greek men that Pablo was with, they did not come on this trip, but he left them a note with the map so that they would know where he is. So the hope is they're gonna be like, Pablo hasn't come back. Let's go and find him. How much time would it take before they actually become concerned? By the time they're concerned and figure out how to get there, like, is it already gonna be too late? We don't know. So they're all really hoping that these Greeks are gonna show up and save them. But even so, it's like, how do they get past the Mayans? But at least maybe they can send for help. I don't know. This whole trip was supposed to be 3 weeks. Their parents aren't expecting them back yet. And even if they were, they have no idea that they're at these ruins. So they're in this very precarious situation. So things just continue to progressively get worse. Eric is super convinced that the vines are now growing inside of him. He feels like his body is getting swollen in certain places, and he just feels like he can feel it, and it feels wrong. So he starts thinking, hey, I should just take a knife to my body and start cutting myself open so I can get these dang things out. And so he's trying to do that, and then Jeff is like, what the fuck are you doing? Are you a fucking idiot? No one believes him about the vines growing inside of him, which I don't know, the vines be doing some crazy things, so I don't really know why they don't believe it. We find out they do take another trip into the hole to look for the cell phone again, and we discover that the chirping noise that they heard that they thought was a ringtone was the vines. The vines were making this noise like as if they were imitating a ringtone. And at a later point, there's a point at which like Stacy and Amy start getting into a fight. It's kind of like, it's a stupid one, but you know, tensions are just so high. So then they start being like, slut, bitch, bitch, slut. And then the vines start saying, slut, bitch. Like the vines are mimicking them. The vines start trying to like turn everyone on each other. So like if the vines heard you talking shit, they're gonna start saying that. So then the person who didn't know you were talking shit on them now knows, because the vines have outed you. At one point, Stacy, Amy, and Eric all decide to get drunk because Pablo still had a lot of tequila, and you know, they were trying to not drink that because that's gonna make them even more dehydrated. But at this point, they're so like hopeless, they just need something to take their mind off it. So they get shmammered, and when Jeff finds out, he's like, are you fucking kidding me, Amy? This is so stupid. You're making everything even worse. And they start getting into a fight, and she's like, I didn't even want to be here. And like she's making it sound like he's just the worst. He cuts off Pablo's legs, he does all the things, he wants to be on Survivor. She just, you know, is kind of throwing some random drunken shit at him, and he is getting a little weird. He's like, say you're sorry. And she's like, I'm sorry. And he's like, say you mean it. Like, I don't know. It's just like kind of a weird, unhinged fight. The ruins are bringing out the worst in him. The alcohol is not bringing out anything good in her. Before they go to bed that night, Jeff decides that like he doesn't want to like check on Amy, and this whole time they always take shifts sleeping. Like they always want someone to be awake to keep an eye out, because what if the Greeks come, or what if the Mayans try to do something, or whatever, what have you. That night, like he is kind of being petty and like doesn't want to talk to her, doesn't want to check on her. And so when she's like getting ready to go to sleep, like he hears her crying, and then it almost sounds like she's like choking and gagging, and he's like, wow, she's really putting it on. And like he knows, like, gosh, I should check on her, but like the petty part of him just doesn't want to. And he almost thinks he like hears her like calling his name while she's kind of choking, and he's just like, no, he like doesn't want to deal with it. And then in the morning we find that Amy is dead. So because she was so drunk, she had started throwing up during that time when she was crying. And throughout the book, the vines have like, anytime they have anything that like they leave on the ground, or like any like, you know, like legs, like if you leave Pablo's legs on the ground, the vines are gonna eat them. So when Amy vomits, the vines want her vomit. So they start going in her mouth while she's vomiting, and she like chokes to death on vomit/vines. And she was calling Jeff's name because she needed his help, because she was dying and he was being a petty little bitch, and ignored her while she was dying. Oh, obviously Jeff makes the super logical suggestion of like, hey, let's eat Amy. Let's eat Amy's body. Let's eat my girlfriend. To which Stacy is like, abso-fucking-lutely not. And they argue back and forth about this for a while, and ultimately eating Amy is vetoed. And we know that the vines are gonna eat her body anyway, so we can't even bury her. Throughout all of this, Eric continues to bitch about the vines growing inside him. So at one point, Jeff is like, fine, I will help you. And like he cuts different parts of him open and is pulling vines out. And then he's like, okay, we got it. And then Eric's like, no, I feel it like in my chest. But it's like, they can't cut his fucking chest open. So he's like, dude, no, that is enough. Now, at one point, Jeff decides that he's going to go down to where the Mayans are and kind of take a look at the perimeter and just try to brainstorm, like, if there is any way, like, maybe they could do a distraction and, like, sneak through somewhere. You know, he's just trying to get creative. Matthias notices that Jeff has been gone for a lot longer than they would have anticipated, so he wants to go check on Jeff. And he asks Stacy to please keep an eye on Pablo. She doesn't want to because it makes her uncomfortable being around Pablo, and he's in this horrible condition and just keeps getting worse and worse. Like, it's shocking that Amy was the one to die before him. But anyway, so she's watching Pablo, but then the vines start making noises that convince Eric that Stacy and Matthias had been having sex. So not only does it imitate people, it'll also just make shit up. So it totally sounds like their voices and like they're fucking. And so then he's freaking out and she's trying to convince him that she didn't do anything, blah, blah, blah. And she gets so distracted, like trying to defend herself, that she forgets to keep an eye out on Pablo. And it's been raining. When Matthias comes back, she's like, oh shit, okay, Pablo. They go and Pablo has died from, you know, exposure to the elements. And Matthias is disgusted with her. While Jeff was scanning the perimeter, at one point he thinks, like, you know what? I think maybe I can make it in like a gap between a couple of them. And he's like, I have to try it because, you know, they're running out of options. So he does. And he gets hit with an arrow and dies. So Jeff, who we kind of thought would be the winner of Survivor, is not. He's dead. Matthias finds him dead. So now we're down to Matthias, Stacy, and Eric. And, you know, Eric's losing it more and more. The more he's like convinced that the vines are in him, the more he's like, should I cut open my whole body? And he does. He starts cutting himself to shreds, and his skin flaps are all hanging off of him. And at one point, Matthias tries to stop him because, what the fuck are you doing? You're gonna kill yourself. Matthias tries to like get to him and like stop him, and Eric just kind of turns around and like not even really all there, like not really paying attention to what he's doing. He fucking stabs Matthias. So now Matthias dies. So now we are down to Eric and Stacy, which is kind of insane because they're the most airheaded of the whole group. So the fact that there are final gals right now is crazy. And so Eric is in so much pain. He knows that the vines are still in him, and you can see it moving around in his body. Like, so there's no getting it out of him at this point. And so he asks Stacy to kill him and put him out of his misery. Asks her to slash his throat. And she's such a good girlfriend, so she does, obviously. Oh, now our final girl, it's Stacy. So what the fuck is Stacy gonna do now, okay? So Stacy, you know, she's dicking around and realizing, like, fuck, you know, the Greeks do not seem to be coming. I can't do this anymore. You know, it's been a couple days. She decides to slit her wrists and she dies. Yep, so they are all dead. One thing I want to note, during their time there, like, occasionally they would find something that it looked like maybe someone tried to leave something behind that said like danger or warning or stay out. Sometimes they would try to like do a warning and like on a sign or something, and like the vines will eat it. So like the vines are making sure that you're not warning other people about the vines. Their whole thought was like, if the Greeks came, they'd be like, hey, don't come here, which the Greeks don't speak English. So I don't know how they thought they were going to communicate that, because it obviously didn't work when the Mayans tried to warn them if you don't speak the same language. And now it's clear that the reason the Mayans were yelling at them, it's not like, oh, don't go on the sacred site. It's like, you are going to die if you do. And the reason they don't want to let them out is because the vines are like this like super crazy contagious thing. And so they're like kind of restricted to this like specific area. But if you leave with vine doo-doo essence on you, you're gonna spread it. Because that's one thing also, is they would notice that the vines started like growing on their clothes, which gross. So they are all dead. While they were there, they also ended up finding a ton more bodies. Like, they just kept finding more and more. And like the clothing kind of indicates that this has happened like throughout time, you know, it's not just all recent bodies. So we find out a couple days after Stacy took her own life, the Greeks arrive. The Greeks arrive, but there's no one there to warn them, so they walk into the ruins, and that's how it ends. I think one of the reasons I liked this book, in addition to the body horror piece of it, which is my jam, I am kind of like fascinated and I don't know, I get suckered into anything that's like very logistically terrifying. Your girl is not a girl of logistics. Like, I feel like, you know, I'm not one to think about like diluting pee to drink it or like building a stretcher out of materials. Like, I am getting voted off the island first on Survivor. So I feel like even, you know, someone like Jeff, who is very logistically in the know, he can be very like MacGyver-y. He did not last here, and so I don't know, I just find it so terrifying. And I also find it fascinating to like figure out the things that people are able to, you know, brainstorm in order to survive. But like these situations, these terrifying situations where it's like you cannot figure out how to get out of this situation, like those kind of get me. So this book, it had really giant print, the copy that my library had. So my version that I read was like 600 pages. But again, I read this so quickly. It really was one where you just like you just want to know what happens next. And there is actually a movie that was based on this book. And after I finished the book, I did watch the movie. The movie's fine, but you know, one thing that really annoyed me is they would randomly switch what happened to who. And I really don't know why. It just didn't make sense, like what their rationale was for some of these changes. I mean, I did still like being able to, I don't know, compare it to the book, but Pablo, he gets shot by the Mayans like before even stepping into the ruins because he's like freaking out and trying to escape whatever. Also in the movie, the Mayans even kill one of their own little boys because Amy like throws some vines at them. It touches the boy, so the Mayans kill one of their own. So yeah, the movie's cool too. I mean, I don't know how much I would have cared about it if I hadn't read the book. So this was a good one. Thank you, Steve, for the recommendation. I am in a different setting. You can see that I'm a little lazy piece of shit doing this in bed. I recently moved and the lighting throughout my whole new place is not established. I don't have like my chandeliers up, so the lighting everywhere is currently terrible. Perhaps we'll be in a different location moving forward. Thank you so much for joining me. I will hopefully see you next time. All right, bye-bye.